Okay, I'm showing at 6:30, so if I can get everybody to head back to their seats, we can get this started. Should be a pretty good meeting. Do you see Ed? No. What? No, next week he'll say. We didn't want to do it with the letters. So, Mr. Johnson, if you come up here, we have a quorum.
Come on, Tony.
Okay, council meeting for May 16, 2011 will now come to order. Please remember that the times indicated next to agenda items are approximate start times only. Please turn off all cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Yes, good evening. Mayor Natal,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Snyder,
Here.
Councilman Moreno,
Here.
Councilman Benson,
He's at a E470 conference someplace.
Councilwoman Carson,
Here.
Councilwoman Teeter,
She's on vacation.
Councilman Johnson.
Here.
You're flashing button, sir.
Sorry.
Hi,
That's
Tony.
okay. Thank
I'm out of
you.
practice.
Councilman McEldowney,
Here.
Councilman Bullock.
Here.
Mayor Natal, you do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for coming. If I can get the audience to please rise for a moment of silence and then join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd like everybody to remember the family of Judy and Tony Tunis. Have some health problems, but I did see them on Saturday, which was good. And as an aside, I'd like to send a thank you out to Stout Street. Stout Street has been going over there, giving them a hand in the yard, which is really nice. They're a great organization. Okay, a moment of silence, please. Thank you. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would we please pass around the microphone for introductions?
Crystal Elliott.
Let's see.
Pam Spratler.
Betty Thomas.
Danny Thomas.
Carlotta Barnes.
Ellen Haug.
Christy Sumner.
Michael Cheney.
Tova Forgo.
Glenn Murray. Terry Quintana.
Gene Leffel, Board of Adjustment.
Ah, there he is.
Joy Bishop.
Del McCall.
John Howard, Information Technology.
I think I'd read it from here, then ask him to come forward.
Yada Cruz, Caitlin Moore.
Carolyn Keith, Parks and Recreation.
Dottie Johnson.
Thanks.
Joanne Gray.
Stella Estrada.
Ed Perlmutter.
Hannah Mullen.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for coming.
Greg Clements, Public Works Department.
Roger Tinkenberg, Finance.
Michelle Halstead, Director of Communications.
Mizraim Cordero, Government Relations.
Brittany Morris, Director of Economic Development.
Phil Blockett, Chief of Police.
Lynn Hallowell, City Manager's Office.
Thank you very much. Thanks you all for coming. Tonight we actually have 5 proclamations. This will probably be the longest part of our whole meeting. And the first one will be for the Government Finance Officers Association. And the city received the Certificate of Excellence from that organization for financial reporting for the 23rd consecutive year. The certificate is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting and represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. Will Roger Tinklenberg and any other members of the Finance Department who are present please come forward, and we will present you with the certificate. Good job. I want to present you with, oh, there she is. Yes, please. You're the ones that earned this.
These are the ones that do the work.
Yeah, I'm just the pretty face here.
Bless you, sir.
Okay. Do you want to say something? That would be nice, or have you?
This is the first year that Carol Eninga hasn't been with us, and unfortunately she's out of the office, but wanted to acknowledge her many years of service to the city, but also introduce to you again Cheryl Carstens, who is the manager for the Financial Services Division. They're the ones that do the bulk of the work that gets this done. And Jason, Leslie here with me as well. You've seen him many times because he's working with me on budget and the long-range financial plan. These individuals and the many people that are in the office do the work, and the credit really belongs to them. So thank you very much.
Do either of you... Would either of you like to say anything? I'm not forcing you, but here's your chance to get on camera. You never know. This could be the start of your movie career. Thank you very much. Do you like to take the next one, please?
It is my absolute honor to make the next proclamation for our good friend and a man who is very good to Commerce City that we all love, Congressman Ed Perlmutter. Whereas Congressman Ed Perlmutter is currently serving his third term in the United States Congress representing the diverse 7th Congressional District, and whereas Congressman Perlmutter has long been known as a bipartisan bridge builder and a champion of renewable energy and smart growth policies, and whereas Congressman Perlmutter has tirelessly represented the needs of Commerce City constituents through his advocacy for job creation, support of needed local transportation infrastructure projects, and defensive community development block grants that fund police officers and urban renewal projects, and whereas Commerce City appreciates the work not only of the Congressman but his dedicated staff who help our shared constituents with issues and concerns, and whereas Commerce City is honored to have a positive working relationship with Congressman Perlmutter that will help further the established goals of the City Council and the stated priorities of our citizens to make Commerce City a thriving and diverse community today and in the future. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of the City Council, hereby proclaim special recognition and thanks to Congressman Ed Perlmutter for his work on behalf of Commerce City residents, businesses, and helping all of us build a quality community for a lifetime. Please come forward, Congressman Perlmutter.
Before we do that, just half a second, sir. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve it. Would you like to do it, and then Mr. Marino will second it?
Sure. Move approval of the proclamation for Congressman Ed Perlmutter.
Mr. Marino?
I will second the motion. And just a side note, we also need to move approval of the last proclamation.
It wasn't a proclamation.
Oh,
It's
was
just
it?
an
It's just
award.
recognition.
Yeah, that's the only reason. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same.
Please come forward,
approved.
Congressman.
You all want to go down and...
Hey, I want to get taller too.
You see a piece.
And you're rolling out. Pretty mean to me.
Right there, that's perfect.
I wasn't planning to receive a proclamation tonight, and I just thank you all very much. I just wanted to come and join you for part of your city council meeting to just get a flavor for what's going on. We've had a number of meetings. I actually am doing a telephone town hall that is patterned after the healthcare town hall that I did here about a month and a half ago. It was the people that helped me were so well received, and the town hall that we had here was so well received. We're going to do a telephone town hall on it. But I haven't met with all of you. We met in D.C. for some, different topics. But I wanted to come out here and just see how things were going, see how your citizens were, what was on their mind, what kinds of concerns they've had. And I just wanted to say to all of you, it is so easy to work with you. This is a team sport we're all in. When you want to advance the ball, if you want to assist the people that you represent, and you've got to do it together. You can't do it one at a time by one person. And working with you all has made it very easy because we do it as a group, Democrats and Republicans. Democrats and Republicans together to advance the interests of the people of this city. And that's all I wanted to do, was to come out here and just see how things were going, and you're very generous and kind to offer me and present me with this award. So it's easy to work with you. I don't really deserve something like this, but I'll take it. This is also, and you all know this, when you're in politics, when you're elected officials, you get a lot of rewards just from doing things for the benefit of your neighbors and your friends. But you also get a lot of, there are a lot of frustrations that are attached to representing people because they have different feelings and different interests and perspectives. So to get an award like this really does help me realize that we're making a difference in people's lives, and you are too. So thank you very much.
Okay, and I think there's a few of us up here that'd like to make a short statement also. Mr. Bullock?
I just want to say thank you for coming, and just thank you in general because you've done so much for Commerce City. Your representation is outstanding for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Snyder?
I, too, want to say thank you, Congressman. You've just been, a pleasure to work with, and my entire campaign, or not campaign, but time on council, sorry. It's just been a pleasure. Sorry. No, you've been a pleasure to work with, and having seen you last night, you're so supportive of everything we do, so I appreciate everything that you've done. You are truly a great leader, and you care about our citizenry, and that, that you don't see that in everybody, so I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done. Thank you.
Ms. Carson?
I also just wanted to thank you for your great representation. It's a pleasure anytime we can go out and help you, so let us know.
Okay.
I did just, can we talk a little bit
You
business?
certainly can.
In meeting with Jerry earlier, and then also having met with a number of the council members a couple weeks ago, still number one on my list of priorities for you all is Tower and Pena. Now, talking partisan politics for a moment, moved from the majority party to the minority party, it makes it a little more difficult for me to get things done, except not in this instance. I think working with the administration and working with our senators,
we can still really try and advance improving Peña Tower, because there's just a lot of activity in that area, and it's just going to continue to grow. So I think by being persistent, we can really make a difference and try to get that interchange improved, even in lean times. And it's not because, it's a major investment, and I think we can convince people of the value of that investment, even in times when we really have to manage our expenses. It took us 10 years to get into this budget mess that we're in. It'll take us about 10 to get out, but that's what Americans do. We will get through this, but we're not going to stop investing in this interim. The United States of America will keep going, and that intersection is critical to this community, to Aurora, to the city of Denver, to the airport, and I will do my best to advance your interests and the interests of the people of this area on that subject.
Okay. And I know I've talked to you about this before, and city politics is supposed to be nonpartisan.
I know that.
But let me tell you, working with you almost makes it nonpartisan. We don't agree all the time, but you know what? There's a bunch of Republicans I don't agree with either. I'm glad that you're here and that you represent us.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And thank you for this award. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next proclamation is to recognize National Police Week 2011, and there's not actually a proclamation. Do you have a proclamation for that sitting with you? No, here? One of these?
No.
Neither one of those is police, right? Okay. So I'm just going to read it right off of my computer, and it says, to recognize National Police Week 2011 and to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States has designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the City of Commerce City play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of Commerce City. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas May 15th is designated as Police Officers Memorial Day, with federal law directing that all flags on government buildings be flown at half-staff on that day to honor the fallen officers and their families. Therefore, be it proclaimed that the City of Commerce City, its mayor and city council formally declare May 15th through 21st, 2011 as Police Week in the City of Commerce City, and publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. I would be open to a motion. Mr. Marino?
Move approval of the proclamation.
Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Jason. Mr. McEldowney, sorry.
Just on a related note, there was and maybe the chief can make sure I get this name right. There was an event held this past weekend in D.C., or riding up to D.C., 300 miles, I believe, in 3 days, a police officers' road ride, memorial road ride. And we had a citizen of Commerce City, Walter Berlinski, who is also with the Adams County Sheriff's Office, who rode in that event, fundraised through the year, and was a participant in that event, and just want to make sure we recognize one of our citizens who serves us in both our county and represented us well on the ride. So we can.
Thank you very much. Chief, did you want to make any comments or?
Briefly, Mayor, thank you. I just want to thank you and the council on behalf of the 92 sworn officers that serve this city and the 25 civilians. Thank you very much for recognizing all of their efforts, and we've been very fortunate not to ever have lost anybody in the line of duty. And we'll certainly try to keep that in the future. Thank you very much.
Ms. Carson, did you have a... No, do you want to talk on this one?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Chief, I just wanted to thank you and all the men and women that go out there every day and protect us and put our needs ahead of theirs, and to their families, because I know it is a huge sacrifice, not just on them, but on their families. So thank you for keeping us safe. And it's a nice city to live in because of the hard work that you do.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes, I just wanted to concur with Councilwoman Carson and say thank you from the bottom of my heart to yourself and all of the officers that work for Commerce City. I know you're really doing a great job, and we've been very fortunate to have you, Chief Bacchus, so thank you for all your work.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your help. The next proclamation is supporting National Kids to Parks Day. It says, whereas May 21st is the first National Kids to Park Day organized and launched by the National Park Trust, and whereas, we need to find another word, you know? National Kids to Park Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks. And whereas Commerce City is committed to expanding recreation amenities for our youth and families, completing new playgrounds, trails, and open space, and whereas it is important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks because of the decline in park attendance over the last decades, and whereas we should encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat the issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, and hypertension, and whereas National Kids to Parks Day is open to all children and adults across the country to encourage a large and diverse group of participants, and whereas Commerce City provides a wide range of programs and activities that improve health and wellness for more than 9,700 diverse participants, and whereas National Kids to Parks Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and the outdoors. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim our participation in National Kids to Parks Day. We urge Commerce City residents to take the children in their lives to a neighborhood, state, or national park on May 21st. Be open for a motion. Mr. McEldowney?
I would love to make the motion, but I first would suggest we make the vote on the prior proclamation.
Oh, did we miss one? Okay. Let's
So if you
let's
can come
finish
back to me
this
on
one
that.
and then we'll go back to that one. Ms. Snyder? Second this one? Second this one. Okay. So I have a motion.
Second the
and a
motion.
Second on this particular proclamation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Great. And then I'll call Ms. Keese. I'll call her just a minute. Let me get the one on the police first. Take a motion on the police proclamation.
We have a motion and a second. We just need a vote.
Oh, all those, okay, we have a motion and, oh boy, told you it's been an early day. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Mr. Johnson, did you have something or was that for that?
For the proclamation.
Okay. Ms. Keith. See, I'm doing that to everybody today. I'm saying, come up, go back, come up, go back.
I would thank Council for the proclamation supporting National Kids to Parks Day and remind you that it's only appropriate as a Let's Move community that we support this initiative, which is one of the White House's Let's Move and Let's Move Outside initiatives. So thank you. We will be encouraging our residents to get out and use our local parks. We also have the opportunity in this state to many nice state and national parks, and soon we'll have and be able to welcome people on a regular basis to the new Visitors Center at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge, which I found kind of interesting. The mascot for this particular program is Buddy Bison, so very appropriate. So again, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we have one more proclamation, that's the mental health.
I have one more. Yes, I have one more. You're on now.
Yes, actually, City Attorney Gaylor, I'm going to read the proclamation for mental health. As many of you know, through the Public Safety Crime Prevention Committee, that steering committee that I sit on for NLC, one of the things that we spend time working on is mental health. So there's a lot. We've come a long way on this issue, and I think that it's gone a long way from the dark ages that mental health used to be in to where we're at today. So it's my honor to present this proclamation. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas there is a strong body of research that supports specific tools that all Americans can use to better help handle challenges and protect their health and well-being, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and with effective treatment, individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full and productive lives. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen shares the burden of mental health problems and responsibility to support prevention efforts. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, on behalf of the City Council of Commerce City, hereby proclaim May 2011 as Mental Health Month in Commerce City, calling upon the entire community to increase awareness and understanding of mental health, as well as need for appropriate and accessible services. Thank you.
I will now entertain a motion. Mr. Marino?
Move approval of the Mental Health Month proclamation.
Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Thank you very much. We got through all of it. I think we'll probably give it to Mr. Flannery, and then he'll get it to whoever is appropriate.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is citizen communication, and there were actually two rosters in the back made available, one for non-agenda items and the second for action items listed on the agenda. When I call your name, please come forward. State your name and address for the record. You're reminded each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. City Council is reminded they are not to engage in discussion or debate, but may ask clarifying questions and express concern when appropriate. City Manager will assign staff members to get the necessary information to solve issues. There's 6 people on the list for tonight. The first one is Joan Gray. How are you this evening? Haven't seen you in a little while.
I have a real concern. I have some grandchildren, and I live on the corner of 66th and Doris Court. We've had 2 animals killed in the last 3 weeks, and a lady got hit. And there's speed bumps. I would like to see if we would be able to put some on 66th Avenue. It seems from all Olive Street all the way down Monaco, it's like a road race. We have a guy that has a gray pickup, double cab, and he didn't even stop when he killed these animals. And they, you got your little kids standing out there crying because the children are, they're puppy. They lost their dog. What can we do to get speed bumps in there? If it takes me to take a petition around, I'll be happy to do so. Okay. But I would like to see something done on East 66th Avenue. We've had car accidents on there also, from people doing like 50 miles an hour and coming to the street stop sign, and they hit them right in the rear end. There's problems.
Okay. Mr. Flannery, if I can refer that over to you, and especially I don't know how many people saw the report last night about the kid pulling out in front of the car and getting hit. That was in Denver. It was not here, but it's becoming a challenge more and more in the neighborhoods.
Yes, it's really getting bad out here.
If you would get with Ms. Gray and talk to her.
Yes, sir.
Okay? You'll make sure that you give all of your information to Mr. Flannery so that we can do that. Mr. Bullock?
Ms. Bright, could you give us your name and address for the record?
Yes, Joanne Gray, 6690 Doris Court, Commerce City, 303-288-5957.
Okay.
I've been a resident here for 40 years, and I mean, it's getting worse. It's not getting better.
I know. Traffic's
And
been
I've got
a challenge.
a little bunch of little grandkids, and I'm really concerned because they just don't slow down.
Okay. Mr.
I'd
Flannery?
appreciate if you guys could help us get some speed bumps in there. I'd really appreciate it.
Good.
Like
Thank
I said,
you
if
for-
I need to go sign a petition, I'm willing to get out there and do so.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming in. Next person is Estelle, and I'm sorry, Estelle, I can't make out your last name, and I should know it, but I don't. And I'll get it right this time if I get a name and address for the record.
My name is Donna Estrada. I also live on 66th Avenue. And she was talking about this truck they just ribby up their motor and they just take off down that road. And like I said, I've got grandchildren too that live in that area. And the street's not very big. It's like maybe 4 blocks long, because a one-way out to Alden Street, I believe, and the Monaco in between those two streets. And I would like to also have speed bump there. So if that could happen, we really would appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Marino?
Thank you.
Mrs. Strada, if you could also tell us your address for the record.
She did in the beginning, didn't she?
I live at
She said
66th
66th Avenue.
6781 East 66th Avenue, right down in Commerce City.
Okay.
And you need my phone number?
And then were the two of you together?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
if both of you will just get a hold of Mr. Flannery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Glenn Murray. It's hot up here tonight. I'm dying. Evening, sir.
Council, please.
Sure, right now? 1 moment. Yes, my name's Glenn Murray, 11010 Havana Street, Brighton. I'm here tonight. This is the second time I'm asking you for some help on an issue here. And that is, you've got a rodent that's running rapid in the city, and that's the prairie dog, better known as a prairie rat. You guys make rules, regulations, ordinances protecting one property owner from the next, how many cars you can have, how many horses you can have, how many chickens, how tall the weeds can be, all of those different issues. And I'm asking you for some help on the prairie dog. I don't know if you've looked around. Go up and down Highway 2, your vegetation is being destroyed. You've got a little critter that has got some serious health problems for humans as well as pets. We've got some real potential on that, and they're out of control. If you would control them on your property, and if you would help maybe some other people control them, there wouldn't be, maybe the right word is trespassing on me. I've spent over $500 attempting to control those, and I'm losing the battle. Economic is my problem at the moment. If we get the plague in there, we get the bubonic plague, it's going to be your problem. And I think it's something the city really needs to address. They're not protected. I'm not interested in translocating or moving or whatever a rodent, but I think we need to get the population of those little critters under control. And I'm asking you for your help. What you're looking at there is a copy of some emails that was back and forth. The response was not satisfactory. They are not a protected species. Matter of fact, they're like a rat is what they are, and they create lots of problems, economic and health-wise. So I'd encourage you that that's only a partial list, but an ordinance, something regulating those things, putting some numbers, getting something that makes some sense in place it would behoove you as a city, and it would improve your image as a city, and it would help a lot of us, and particularly in my case, economically, I would really appreciate some help.
Okay. Mr. Flannery, if you would get back to Mr. Murray, and then if you could get a report back to council also, because this is the second time, just so we know what the answer is, so we understand what it is.
Yes, sir, I'd be happy to sit down with
And
Mr. Murray.
Great. And Mr. McEldowney.
Just to piggyback on the mayor's comment, I guess it's clear we can see the exchange with Mr. Cordero and Mr. Murray, but if we could have a more comprehensive update on the state law that's referenced, et cetera, and just understand what practices other cities have dealt with or explored in trying to deal with the prairie dog issue. I know we're not the first. They've been here forever, so it would be great.
Thank you, sir. Michael Cheney? Gee, haven't seen you in a day. 2 days. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Michael Cheney, 7980 Olive Street. I'm here as the Secretary of the Board for Community Enterprise, and I've brought in copies of our Games Manager's license, or certificate, and our raffle license, and I'd just like to give these to you so that you guys are aware of them.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind, if you would just give it to Mr. Gaylor, because he handles all the legal stuff. Okay?
That's it.
Thank you very much, sir. Next person on the list is Larry Quintana.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Larry Quintana. I reside at 7780 Magnolia Street, Commerce City, Colorado, the unincorporated portion of the of the community. I'm here again to address my concerns regarding the Memorial Day Parade. No, don't worry, I'm not going to bring up the Latino issue once again. I know that after my last conversation, I think I received some feedback that I'm kind of biased regarding my passion for the Latino community, and that's understandable because I readily admit that I am. Tonight I want to speak after doing, I believe, a good deal of research regarding the Memorial Day Parade and other issues, is that in the history of this parade, to my amazement, or maybe I shouldn't be amazed, that we have never acknowledged a female veteran in the parade in any manner. I was able, as I went around speaking to the members of the community, to find out that we do have women who have served as far back as World War II to step forward in the service of this country, this state, and this community. But never once have, to my knowledge, has this ever been acknowledged. One woman in particular, whose husband was drafted in World War II, saw that situation, volunteered, her sister volunteered, and she got her brothers to volunteer also because of their love for this country. And yet, in our community, they've been overlooked. Personally, I think that's a sad situation because the women who have served in this nation, and as I pointed out several weeks ago, the ones who gave up their lives during the Vietnam War for this nation should be recognized and acknowledged as an intricate part of what they've given to our community. I also want to make this statement. There have been many women who have not put on the uniform but have served just as gallantly for this community and this nation. I look back at those women that we refer to as Rosie the Riveter, who left their homes, relocated, and made their effort for this great nation. And so often we just overlook them. I think of all the women who have sent their sons, their daughters, and their husbands off to war, and they're neglected. I think they're just as much of a patriot as every one of us. And I see the bell has rang, but you know where I stand. Incidentally, I'm not looking for the women vote. I won't even proclaim that I'm running for anything. But in my heart of hearts, we owe it as a community to put the women of our community up along with the men of our community for the service they've done for Commerce City. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. And just as an aside, I don't think anybody needs to ever apologize for having a heart for anything that they believe firmly in. Thank you. And Mr. Flannery, one more suggestion for next year's. Okay, next person is Joy Bishop.
I decided not to speak tonight, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is the consent agenda, and there's only one item on the consent agenda this evening. So I am open for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Marino?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, will the city attorney please read the title?
Title of Ordinance 1859 reads, an ordinance amending Ordinance 1761 of the ordinances of the City of Commerce City relative to amendment of the description of the boundaries of Ward 3 in the City of Commerce City.
Okay, so I've had a motion and a second. City attorney's read the title. Request a roll call vote, please. Okay, the vote is 7 yeses. Consent agenda is passed. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance on first reading, and it's ordinance 1860. Ordinance amending the 2011 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Adams County Open Space Grant in the amount of $312,000. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I'd be open to a motion, Ms. Snyder.
Yes, move approval of ordinance 1860 on first reading.
Mr. Johnson?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing nobody up, I'd just like to mention that I was out there to pick up that check. And can we say what it's going to be used for, Mr. Flannery? I mean, is that okay, or?
Yeah. It's Adams.
Oh, Fairfax
County
Park.
Open
It says
Space
right there. You know, it's been a long day. Yeah, I'm going to need some. Yeah, I can really see it. But it's going to be terrific, and it was so nice of the county to come up with that money and for Parks and Rec to get that in, and Ms. Noel being our grant writer. So I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads, an ordinance amending the 2011 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Adams County Open Space Grant in the amount of $312,000 to be used for a new irrigation system and maintenance building at Fairfax Park and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
Okay, I've had a motion and a second. City attorney has read the title. Request a roll call vote,
We have
please.
just a moment, please.
Okay. As we're waiting.
Technical
This was actually, when I first came on council, Fairfax Park was a challenge, and Mr. Johnson and Ms. Drotar, and were you there also? I can't remember. And Ms. Snyder were all out there with our own rakes trying to get this thing done. Under a different administration, but we're seeing it, and we really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, that day we were out there.
Oh, yeah. Can we tell a couple of jokes?
Give me a second. Okay. Go ahead, you can start the vote.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Vote is 7 yeses. It passes. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the 2011 first quarter financial status presentation. Mr. Flannery, would you please introduce staff to handle this?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to ask Finance Director Roger Tinklenberg to come up and present.
Did I miss something?
That's later.
Oh, okay. What?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This is an overview of the, sorry.
No, you're fine.
No, I don't need that. This is an overview of the general fund for the first quarter. In the blue is the results for 2010 first quarter, and by comparison is the basically yellow brownish color for 2011. No intent implied by the coloring, just kind of a random thing. You notice that the, sorry, getting used to this microphone. You notice that the revenues and expenditures for 2011 are significantly higher than 2010. The first bar there, which is the of the right-hand side of those four column bars, the left one is the revenue, actual revenue we've seen in the first quarter, and you notice that is higher than the budget. That next bar to it includes fund balance transfers, and then the darkest bar there is the budget without those fund balance transfers. And the reason I included those two as a comparison is that we don't make the transfers for those from fund balance or from other funds until the end of the year when we see how things actually turn out for the year. So when you compare the revenues to that budget without fund balance, it shows that we're in really good shape. Now the very far right bar is the expenditures for the first quarter. Now if you compare that to the revenues, you'd say, whoa, wait a minute, expenditures are ahead of revenues. In actuality, they are not. The reason that shows up significantly higher is because we had a budget amendment which defeased the 2002 bonds, and so there's basically about 1.6, 1.7 million that shows up there for the transfer to the defeasance. In addition, we also have the transfer to capital improvement program. If you recall in the budget, we had set up a transfer of 2.3 million to the capital improvement fund, and so that transfer has occurred. So that's why expenditures look significantly ahead of revenues at this point. When in actuality, if you compare actual revenues to actual expenditures, that's not the case. That becomes more clear when we look at the actual numbers here. Our budget is 52.2 million, and first quarter totals in revenue is 13.6. We're at 26% of budget, so that's good because we should be at 25% by now, or by the end of March. On the expenditure side, we've expended 14.7, and you notice, again, you take out that 2.3 for the CIP, and also we've already transferred 1.3 for debt service. Take that out of there, and then you can see that that 14.7 million is significantly less. In fact, if you just take out the 2.3, then it's down to 12.4 compared to 13.6 in revenues. So very good sign. Debt service, this is kind of redundant in the sense that we've talked about the defeasance. That's why the expenditures on the far right-hand side show up higher than the revenues, and middle bar is the budget. Debt service totals, there are the numbers. You can see that our expenditures are at 53%, and that's because our debt service payments are front-loaded, so things go into balance towards the end of the year. And also, debt service budget was amended for the 2002 bond series, or series bonds defeasance. Golf, first quarter, again, unaudited. I'm sorry. You'll notice the budget is significantly higher. That's the left hand of the three right-hand columns. That's higher than last year, and the reason is because we took over the operation of the restaurant. You notice the revenues are higher, the budget is much higher, and the expenditures are higher. And again, with the golf course, it's seasonal. Expenditures are pretty much year-round. Not totally, because they ramp up during the summer, and that's obviously the peak season, so expenditures do increase then. But again, on track and looking good compared to last year. So revenues are at 13%, expenditures are at 22%, and again, like I said before, expenditures always outpace revenues in the first quarter. So in summary, revenues are up, expenditures are under control, and the city is in good shape so far in 2011. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments from council? I want to thank you. This is not that this has been an easy time. It's been a tough time nationwide, but our city has done so much better. I mean, I sit in mayor's meetings at least once or twice a month, and it's tough to stay quiet when, everybody else is having some pretty tough times. Not that you want them to, but I am so proud of our staff with Mr. Flannery's leadership and all of the people he's got under him, that we've weathered this storm so much better than everybody else. It's terrific. Thank you so much, Mr. Tinklenberg. Yeah, we do. We probably owe you all a round of applause again. And I know it's a team effort. and each one of you, from Mr. Flannery on down, especially Ms. Keith, you don't take credit for leading your team, and I understand it's a team effort. It's been wonderful from one end to the other. Yes, a wonderful job. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger.
Mr. Flannery, on to an update on the retreat and city staff retreat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. If I could just add to what you've just ended on the last subject on. We are, in many ways, in Commerce City, blessed with the fact that we have a strong industrial base. And so because of that, we've had the ability to weather the storm a little bit better, because even in the downturn, there was a slight incline of activity in industrial business. But that doesn't take away at all from the efforts that all of the staff and all the departments have made. It's very seldom I have a chance to piggyback off the comment, but I wanted to make sure that we said that, and especially transitioning into the next item, which is a update from the City Council goals and the follow-up presentation tonight. Do you have the PowerPoint?
Ready to flip over?
Okay.
Okay.
What do I do? Right. This is kind of a first here for. So basically, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we had the staff retreat up in Genesee and had a number of conversations. And what you see tonight is a presentation on what the staff did with your goals after the council retreat in February. City Council, we're going to start tonight with the City Council overview of the goals, outcomes for the leadership team retreat, the process in moving forward, in looking at the quarterly updates as requested by Council, and staff tracking within the departments, and department-level goals and strategies. And then after, I'm going to let Mr. Aker and Mr. McBroom present the last 4 slides. As you know, the council had 4 overarching goals, and we'll have a slide mentioning those in 2 slides away here. But then there were 16 resulting priorities that the council identified. And based upon the city council retreat and the public input, they came up with those resulting priorities that the staff took back into their staff retreat. The remaining 2010 city council goals were also carried forward. So in the retreat the staff had, we had your goals from 2010, and we took those and implemented those back into our discussion, the ones that were either ongoing or hadn't been accomplished at that point, and matched them up with the overarching goals as well as the priorities that you all set. So in the leadership team goals, the leadership team, which is really made up of the department heads and the deputy city managers and myself, there were 70 separate department-level goals, and they were organized accordingly to the related city council goals. So when you had a specific idea of your overarching is to promote economic development, you may have had a specific one on how we did that in a priority, whether it was attracting a certain type of business, whether it was following something within the strategic plan that we developed in economic development. And then from that point, the city staff took that and implemented it, and we're going to bring that back down to the departments and implement it through the department work plans. So there are more being added as we continue to go along. So the nice thing about what I mentioned a couple weeks ago was the elevation that you set your goals at a higher elevation allows for flexibility within the department. So if you had a specific goal where we wanted a specific action, there may be some departments that didn't have an avenue or a nexus to that specific goal at that elevation. So those departments may be looking at that and saying, well, we don't know how to implement that because it's too finite. So the higher elevation goals that you set actually allow the staff to work within those, and as they come up with them throughout the year, which always happens, they can fit them nicely into your overarching goals and priorities. And so from that point, we look at the department goals being broken down into the specific actions and strategies, and then we look at the emphasis on outcomes and measuring the progress, and that is in the beginning stages as we move forward. And with that, I want to turn it over to Mr. McBroom to go over the four overarching and then into the 16 priorities.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I think it's on. It just needs to be turned up a little bit. Just to emphasize a few of the points that Mr. Flannery made, the City Council retreat was extremely valuable direction and leadership for city staff. We're fortunate to have a tremendously dedicated city staff that's committed every day to delivering high-quality public services to the Commerce City community. But it's important for City Council to lay out the broad priorities. And as Mr. Flannery mentioned, those are the four overarching goals that you see on the screen. Then related to that, as part of your work on February 24th and 25th, you developed 16 separate priorities related to those four overarching goals. So in a very broad sense, City Council laid out the right what. What are the key objectives that city staff and the community needs to be focused on? Related to that, city staff had its retreat on April 8th. And we took the four overarching goals and the 16 related priorities and looked at department level goals and objectives that could be accomplished to help achieve those 16 council priorities. So what you see on the top of this screen is an example, and it's just
even if I was 20,
representation purposes.
I couldn't see that.
We're trying to impress you with the volume of staff level goals that we're committed to accomplishing over the next 12 months. If you could read the top of the screen, what you would see is one of the 16 council priorities. Listed under that are some of the 70 department level goals that your staff can accomplish to help achieve that council priority. At the bottom of the screen are some 2010 goals that have not yet been completed that we're carrying forward. So this is a staff tracking tool that we're using to organize and manage our efforts to accomplish our goals on a day-to-day basis, but also relate them back to the 16 priorities that Council laid out for us. This will be the basis of our reporting tool to come back to Council on a quarterly basis and report on our progress. And now I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Aker.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'll do the wrap-up here, so to speak. This next slide further illustrates a continuation of the previous couple of slides that Mr. Broom showed, which we took a high-level council goal, one of the related priorities, and then we've taken it down in this level to a staff-level department goal, and then show what may be in that to develop or to create this goal. And it's this bottom level where the frontline staff gets involved. We wanted to show in the, I'll just back up to the slide, in this slide how we can continue to involve staff cross-departmentally in some cases in implementing and achieving one of City Council's goals. With that, we hope to, one, spread the wealth, so to speak, so that all the staff's involved, but also show staff how their work relates to a higher level City Council goal as we move forward this year. And then what's next? We'll do a formal first quarterly update in July where we'll take some of the goals that we've been working on, give Council an update. Hopefully we've actually achieved some of the low-hanging fruit, taking care of those based on what council gave us out of the January retreat. We also hope in the June 13th City Council and staff planning discussion that we'll likely have some further refinement and additional prioritization based on budget and future budgets and maybe potential funding that may refine some of those staff goals and input into council's goals. Next, we'll also continue to refine our internal tracking tool. We've been playing with that to make it easier to use for staff and for Jerry, myself, and Mr. McBroom to kind of work with our various departments on tracking how their progress is. With the final goal is that we can put something out to City Council and to the citizens that is easy to understand and can be published on the web and the city news, give folks a snapshot of where we're at from staff and council. And with that, we'll answer any questions you might have.
Mr. McEldowney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Flannery and Mr. Aker and Mr. McBroom, thank you very much for the update. It's exciting to see the progress being made and the form that is starting to appear relative to our planning. Just for folks that aren't familiar with sort of where we've been and where we are, a couple of years ago, Councilwoman Droder and I proposed some changes to how we plan and how we organize that planning to better align with all of our sort of major milestones for the year. And with a great leap of faith, Council jumped into that planning process 2 years ago, and we revisited it this year with some subtle tweaks. And it's the ultimate goal of that process was to get to the point that Mr. Aker just spoke to, which was transparency for our community about what it is we're doing, how does it tie directly into the things that they see as important. We added to our process this year a sort of mini survey of the community to help give us a pulse on what things were hot to kind of temper our own personal passions. It's been awesome to see how that aligned with the community survey that the communication team just ran, and to see now these high-level goals linking clearly down to the more tactical projects that are going to help realize those objectives. It just shows that there's a lot of hard work going on. I think these become tools that help the community better understand the work that has been going on and goes on every day, but may not be easily seen. And so this becomes a great tool to help evidence the good work that's happening, as we heard, across departments, and how many verticals or many departments are tying into a single deliverable. So thank you for the work. I'm excited to see this progress, and excited to sit down on the 13th of June and get back at the next round of even more difficult decision making.
Mr. Mayor and Councilman McEldowney and members of council, I think it may have been mentioned, but one of the exercises that we did at the staff retreat was when we put the 16 priorities up on big stickies on the wall, we had the 2010 goals, but then we had the other goals from the council retreat. And prior to that retreat, the three of us sat in my office saying, okay, how do we sort these out? And we were worried that one of these priorities may not have any items on it. And it's theoretically possible, but we said, well, let's see how it goes. And we went into the staff retreat, and every one of the priorities had a number of items on it, and there were no homeless priorities. So it was really fascinating to watch that, because then we went to a second level of exercise and took the 2010 goals and then aligned those. And so what's the beauty of this, in my opinion, is that no matter what goals the council and staff come up with, there's an alignment with these overarching priorities. And as your priorities change, that fits the new model, and we'll roll those into the next year depending on what the situation might be. So I think it's been very exciting. I know when I was watching it in action at the retreat for staff, I got kind of giddy, I guess. It was really fascinating to watch it proceed. So, and I thank all of you for that, because you had that time where you took the time over the weekend to put those broader goals in place, so we could put the alignment down all the way to the frontline employee. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next item is a presentation on the fiscal policy and strategy recommendations in long-range financial plans. Mr. Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Finance Director Roger Tinklenberg to come and make a presentation on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Many years ago, individuals thought we ought to bag an elephant, and then eventually the City Council took official action and said, we're going to bag an elephant.
Congressman Perlmutter, don't worry about this.
There is no political statement intended with the choice of the animal, just its size. You know, when we started annexing up in the North Range, I think a lot of people realized that there was challenges, but not really the extent of the challenges that were involved. And obviously, there are challenges because we have to build parks, there's stormwater we have to deal with, trails, roads, we have to preserve right-of-way, schools need to be built. It's not a city problem, and yet we have to provide for it. And we did that through voluntary impact fees. There's sewers that have to be built, city facilities have to be built. All of that's a huge problem in the sense of challenge. In 2004, when we adopted the first long-range plan, we identified, over $1 billion worth of projects that needed to be funded. And we set out to start funding those. And we've been able to fund some. The challenge is how do you fund that over $1 billion worth of projects? Now, you've probably heard the comments about how do you eat an elephant? Well, the cute thing is you do it one bite at a time, which is fine. And you have refrigeration for a week, and you're not under the hot African sun. So picture yourself on the African savanna. The sun's beating down on your head. You can hear hyenas off in the distance. In the other direction, you hear a lion pride roaring. How are we going to take care of that thing? And feed that. The challenge, of course, is to be able to preserve that critter before it's spoiled. We have a little ice chest. You notice that ice chest isn't large enough to put that whole big animal in. So you have to figure out how to carve it up, how to deal with one part at a time. That's the reason for today's presentation. Back in January, City Council set the 2011 priorities. All of those were wrapped together to build a quality community for a lifetime. Now, staff needs constant direction to be able to build an action plan for the next 10 years, because that's what the long-range financial plan is supposed to look at. What do we do between now and 2020? We have to build, we anticipate, about a quarter of all of those projects. So somehow we have to carve up and preserve a quarter of that in the next 10 years and take care of that, setting us up so that in the final build-out, which should happen over 20 to 30 years beyond that, we can take care of the rest of it. I'm going to start, first of all, with the 2011 revenue expenditures. If you recall, when we set up the budget, we set up a total operating budget of $45.2 million. We have revenues estimated at $44.9 million. And we filled the difference between that revenue and expenditures by moving in some money from fund balances. We also used one-time money, that $2.3 million I talked about earlier, to fund some capital projects. The net result was we had $6 million that we didn't have covered by revenue, and so we had to figure out how to do that. And we covered it. We did it using fund balance in general fund balance in the fleet fund, as well as some other small transfers from other funds. So we covered that $6 million. Of that $6 million, 2.3 was from one-time tax settlements for CIP projects. And as I reported to you earlier, the first quarter 2011 revenues exceed the expenditures. So that's the good news. Looking at 2012, when we put together the budget, we put together an estimate for 2012, and it shows the expenditures exceeding revenues by $3.2 million. So we're gaining ground, we know that, but the budget process has just started, and so we don't know what the final numbers will be for a number of months yet. Wow, that one didn't turn out. I'm sorry, something happened there. I apologize to the audience. You can't see that one slide. I'm not sure what happened there. It'll show up a little later. So looking at the estimated revenues for the next 10 years, you notice we did a very ultra-low estimate. That's that bottom line. We also did a low estimate, a medium estimate, and a high estimate. Here's what the historic, and here's what I was going to show you earlier. This is the historic. From 2000 to 2006, it climbed at a very rapid rate. Then, of course, it started dropping. And then it leveled off for 2010. And that's the budget number. We should have the final 2010 numbers shortly because the auditors are just wrapping up their work. Once we have that, then we can adjust that number, which will affect all of these other, will adjust it up somewhat. So if you look at this high line, the high estimate, it pretty well follows that same line, trend line as the historic from 2000 to 2006. Some comments on the revenue estimates. The estimates include only the recurring portion of the one-time revenues. Just as a refresher, we have one-time revenues that come in from tax audits, and we always estimate that a certain base amount of that will recur each year. And what is over of that we consider totally or truly as one-time revenues, and therefore we don't want to include those in the operating budget. The ultra-low estimate provides a worst-case scenario of 2.1% growth. I know that, echoing your comments earlier, Mayor, that there's cities that would be happy with a 2.1% growth, but for us that would be an ultra-low. So that low estimate assumes no to very low expansion in the number of businesses. I'm sorry, the low estimate is 4.2%, and 2.1 is no growth in number of businesses. Messed it up. Sorry. The middle estimate includes both growth within existing businesses and modest expansion in the number of businesses. So that's at a 5% growth. The high estimate provides an upside scenario, and that's at 6.8%. The middle and high estimates may provide money for employees, increase services, and add new programs and capital projects. And the reason that's important is because as the population continues to expand, more and more people require more and more services. So we need to be able to match that growth. Some of the vulnerabilities that we talked about earlier in an earlier presentation. All of the city revenues are affected to varying degrees by the national economy. For example, the sales tax falls or rises as retail sales change, but we're not reliant on big box retail, so we're less vulnerable to economic shocks. The use tax falls or rises as businesses contract or expand, mainly through their equipment purchases. And of course, the franchise tax tracks the economy as well because of utility sales and telecommunication purchases. Property tax changes are delayed, and the good thing about property tax is that it's only $2 million of our entire $50+ million budget. municipal court fines are fairly stable, and that's actually affected more by the staffing in the police traffic unit than it is by the economy. A major source of permit revenue is building permit, and those are affected by the housing market, business expansions, new business location decisions, and then investment earnings are determined by market interest rates. And of course, the Federal Reserve Bank and the market expectations affect that. We have revenues that are vulnerable to what happens at the Colorado legislature. For example, the highway users tax, that's almost $1.5 million. That comes from a revenue sharing formula, and the legislature could change that to true up their budget. Also, motor vehicle registrations, the legislature could change that. That's $160,000 per year. Cigarette tax, legislature could change that. That's $120,000 per year. Lottery revenue we don't take into the general fund, but again, that is vulnerable to the legislature changing their formula as well. We also receive intergovernmental revenues from Adams County. Road and bridge tax is the largest amount that goes into the general fund. That's $400,000. We receive transportation tax, but that goes into the capital improvement program, and then open space tax also goes into the capital improvement program. So the greatest vulnerability would be the highway users tax, the motor vehicle registration, cigarette tax, and that totals $1.7, almost $1.8 million. We also have the $400,000 from county road and bridge tax, and the recommendation is to move those funds out of the general fund into the capital improvement program. Now here's our general fund expenditure history going from 2000 to 2009. We'll add 2010 as soon as we have an official number there. Those expenditures have increased by 13.5% per year. The estimates of the expenditures are that the low estimate will increase by 3.8% per year. The medium estimate will be 6% per year growth, and the high estimate is for 7.9% growth per year. That's the history along with the estimates, so you can kind of draw your own conclusion from the trend line, but it would look like, or it would appear that the middle estimate will track the historical, what has happened historically. The low estimate basically maintains existing operation. No new employees, no service expansion, no major capital projects. And basically the city will have to scramble to maintain services. One-time tax audits and settlements may be able to fund one or more large capital projects, but that would be it. It would be pretty limited. However, you have to bear in mind that major capital projects also require ongoing revenue to cover that added ongoing operation and maintenance costs for those projects, whether it's a building or a road or a park. The medium estimate from the departments is at 6%. Now, that's not been fiscally constrained by management. It assumes some growth in staffing and services. And then the high estimate from the departments is 7.9% growth. Again, not fiscally constrained. The takeaway from all of this is that we have to be able to balance the capital budget and the operating budget so that we can fund the existing operation plus whatever is added to be able to fund that ongoing maintenance and operation. Now, comparing the estimates for revenues and expenditures, you'll note that the low revenues are slightly ahead of the low expenditures. That flops when you look at the medium and the high. The revenues are less than the expenditure estimates. Again, those estimates are not fiscally constrained, plus we need to factor in the 2010 numbers so that those could change somewhat. But again, just out of the chute, it looks like there's a problem, without management intervention, so to speak. So recapping all of that, departments add staff to deal with population growth, then expenditures start exceeding the revenues. The medium is by $5 million and the high is by $10 million by the end of the 10-year period. So by the time we get out to 2020, that's what the gap would be without any, changing those numbers, obviously. So we need to constrain the expenditures, and we need to prioritize projects, and we need to find alternative revenue sources. Now, quickly summarizing the long-range financial chapters that have been presented to you in previous presentations, as I said just earlier, the expenditures exceed revenues. The new drainage is almost development funded. We have drainage basin fees that are in place for the various drainage basins, so that will take care of the majority of that work. What is not paid for is ongoing maintenance, both in the historic city and in the new areas, because those fees only pay for the capital projects. They don't pay for the ongoing maintenance. So when you factor all of that together, it's estimated that we will need to come up with almost $4 million per year to fund that ongoing maintenance and compliance with the federal regulations for water and drainage. And the recommendation is to form a stormwater utility to do that. In addition, facilities need to be expanded and improved. We talked about the Municipal Service Center needing an expansion in Phase 1A, plus the police substation, and then 1B phase for Municipal Service Center, for a total for the 10-year period of $14.4 million. On top of that, you have all of the transportation projects. And these are just a sampling of the ones that I pulled out that the city has total control over. There's also projects such as Highway 2. That's a state highway. We don't control that, but if the state, turned it over to us, then obviously we would have to face that challenge. So we have Tower Road. We have 96th Avenue from Buckley to Tower Road. We have the overpass of the UP Railroad. That's item B there for 96th Avenue, $21.5 million. 96th Avenue widening, $29.4 million. 88th Avenue, again, the railroad overpass, $23.3 million. Widening, $21.5 million. And on and on. We have all of those projects. We need your direction to prioritize those projects. We also have the parks, open space, recreation, and trails. You have all of the trail loops that need to be completed in the next several years, or that would like to be completed in the next several years, close to $8 million. O'Brien Canal Trail, $5.6 million. Second Creek Trail, $1.7 million. You have parks like Second Creek Neighborhood Park, $3.2 million. First Creek Community Park, $11.5 million. A new recreation center would be $19.3 million, et cetera, et cetera. You get the picture. A lot of projects. Pass-through revenues that we have that come into the city, such as the Adams County Transportation Tax, Highway Users Tax, all of those different funds, the lottery funds we get from the state. We estimate those can fund about $40 million over the next 10 years. So you compare that to the list of projects that need to be accomplished over the next 10 years, $294 million. So obviously we have a little bit of a gap. Hence the ice chests. We need more ice chests or else we need less projects, one of the two. So in summary for the general fund, some general fund revenues are vulnerable. We need to constrain the growth in the operating costs. There's currently not enough revenue to fund inflation in operating costs and capital projects, and we need to identify the ongoing operation and maintenance costs of those projects. Capital project summary, there's not enough ice chests to preserve all of the elephant. So again, we're going to need to priority rank the projects. We need to identify the ongoing O&M costs, and we must establish the project phasing plans. We also need to develop new funding sources if we're going to proceed with many of the projects. Now, it is possible to accomplish the task. Here are some potential funding sources, and I emphasize the potential because obviously some of these would cause some dire distress. Refuse collection fee, that would just require council approval, but that would result in $1.8 million per year. Stormwater utility and fee could generate $3.3 million per year. Increase the impact fees. For example, on 500 homes, an increase would generate $1 million per year. Again, only council approval. You go from there to items that require voter approval. A sales tax increase. A half a cent increase would generate $4.2 million. Property tax increase, 1 mil would generate 675,000. So it's not a big jump with property tax. Sales tax on food, I know that's real palatable. I'm being sarcastic. Voter approval. At the current rate, that would generate 2 million. Head tax. That's what Denver does. And using their number of $15 per paycheck, that would generate 11.7 million. We could form new GIDs. We have an existing GID. We could form 3 more. Those could generate potentially 5 million each. We could form a recreation district, and if the voters approved a mill levy at the amount that the Parks and Recreation Department costs at this point, it would require 9.3 mils. How about a toll on Tower Road? Again, I'm not advocating that some of these are real palatable. I'm just saying these are options. Carbon-based fuel tax. You know, there's a lot of different concepts out there in terms of generating money. Now, could we use bonds? We could use bonds for a city, part of the city portion, instead of doing the pay-as-you-go approach that we've been using primarily. And those could be either revenue bonds or general obligation bonds. Now, if you look at general obligation bonds, there are some pros and cons. For the city issuing general obligation bonds, the pros are that when the voters approve a bond issue, they would also be approving a mill levy to support that bond issue. So it provides another funding source. Now, a con is it would require a citywide vote and approval from the voters. A pro is that it would fund both historic city and North Range facilities. The con is it would increase property taxes citywide. Pro and a con, the limit is 67.5 million. And if you remember, our total is 294 million. So it could get us partway there, but it's certainly not something that is top of the list. The Northern Infrastructure GID could also issue bonds. Those could be general obligation bonds. It might be easier to obtain approval. I emphasize the might. It's limited to the north range of the city, however. It has a higher debt capacity because it has not the same limit as the city, but the area already has high property taxes. So what's the likelihood of that being able to pass? Again, probably not real great. So what do we need from you at the retreat and after? We need council direction. What projects do you want to fund? Which projects should be funded first? In other words, the priorities. And how do you want to fund the projects? Just a comment on the background, that's not meant to represent council members going tusk to tusk. That's competing projects, okay? After the retreat, we're going to need council action to establish funding mechanisms if that's the direction for council. So what's the good news in all of this? We've funded about $250 million in the past 10 years. Now you can say, well, how did we do that? Well, we issued bonds. The voters approved $64 million worth of bonds for Quebec and 56th Avenue. The Northern Infrastructure GID voters approved $79.9 million for 104th Avenue. So we've taken on some big projects and have been able to knock those out. The only problem is we can't go back to the well for those projects, for additional projects, I should say. Now, by implementing various new funding strategies, it is possible to fund another $250 million in the next 10 years. If we can do that, that would leave an estimated $500 million of capital projects to be funded in the remaining 20 to 30 years until build-out. So again, it's possible, but it's going to require some tough decisions. So, in summary, what are the recommendations? Well, the recommendations are to stabilize the general fund revenues, and that would be to move the vulnerable revenues out of the general fund and establish new revenues to backfill what was taken out of the general fund. We're also going to need to choose between funding sources and project trade-offs, and that's where we need your direction in the council retreat. We need your direction on setting priorities on the projects. And then we as staff need to establish project phasing plans. And then we need to be able to establish funding sources for the projects. So next steps, council retreat, obviously, weighing the trade-offs, setting priorities, and agreeing on funding sources, and then gaining public input on the trade-offs and priorities. Recommendation that the council adopt a long-range financial plan, and then council act on the recommendations in the long-range financial plan. And that is the last presentation on the long-range financial plan until the council retreat, obviously.
Thank you, sir. As always, you do a great job. Questions from council? Councilman Moreno.
Thanks, Roger. I can tell that you're going to be a popular guy with the folks at home after tonight. I am waiting for you to tell us that that elephant is actually filled with money, and then I'll be okay.
I wish it were.
I did have a question about the one proposal you brought up was increasing building impact fees. That could potentially generate $1 million. What's the increase? What's the increment? I didn't see that in the presentation. What's that estimate based off of?
That was based on the request that Parks and Recreation, I think, has discussed with you previously, and also bringing the road impact fees up to full funding for the arterial roadways. So for the road impact fees, I can talk to that one. That one I recall off the top of my head. That would essentially mean doubling that fee.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney?
So I was in the middle of reflecting on that prior presentation's PowerPoint and thinking, man, these colored bars are getting old. And then you come out and blow us away with this presentation. So thank you very much. This was great. You had us captivated from the minute you started. The data itself is awfully captivating as well, and it's good to see this build up in advance of the June retreat. We've got some tough decisions to make, and I think, if all we had to do was pick the projects that we wanted to deliver, that'd be a piece of cake. But I think the real challenges, as you highlight, are how do we set the priorities and how do we fund these projects? And to me, I feel like there's a lot of work that could or should be done between now and the June retreat to help make the most of our time there. The one thing that seems to me to be a priority would be to figure out what is a priority. How do we define a priority? How do we determine what of that list makes sense to pursue? I think we could all argue from gut why any one project on that list or any several projects make great sense. But to me, it seems like we need to start thinking a little differently in that we need to look at as I would sort of term it, a return on investment. What's going to give us something for those dollars, more than just lane miles? What will help trigger growth, the right kind of growth? What would attract business? What would help incent additional or incremental revenue into the tax base? So I don't know if it's possible for you to help, in advance of the retreat, essentially assemble little miniature business cases. And these don't have to be scientific, but essentially a rough brainstorm that staff could help contribute to say, all right, let's presume that we build out Tower Road between here and here. What might that do to spur, business investment, et cetera, so that we can look at those projects and at least come up with some basic criteria that helps us weigh Project A versus Project B versus Project C. I'm just concerned that if we sit down and we look at this list and we try and weigh that list without some additional data behind it, or at least some projections, that it's just a list and it's just a random order that we've assigned to those projects. If, however, we can come up with some greater criteria to put behind those projects and help make that decision, we can then look at the other side of the equation on the revenue side and say, well, if we think we can do X from a what are we going to realize as a result of doing some of these projects? It may help us make the case for some of these less desirable funding increases, if we can help paint that picture. I know that's not an easy task, but does that make sense?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I would say that there are other options that are up there, that aren't up there, I should say. We have a discussion coming up on ballot measures. Next week, Sam Mamet is coming in Some of those ballot measures may be a tax on marijuana. Well, we have no marijuana facilities in the city, so that's all dependent on what comes out of the business community in that regard. Another GID along Tower Road is another option. I think Roger's presentation is trying to address the possibilities, and I think that's what you see is the problem, the elephant in the room, and the ability to pay for it in the ice chest. It's a great, it certainly makes the point. And, you know, when we look at any number of cases, one of the things that we, you know, can look at, it's all dependent on the level of pain. And in the past, if we had this presentation 4 years ago going into the economic downturn, what would we have done? For 4 years, we've really pretty much kept status quo. So status quo isn't necessarily a comfortable place, but it is certainly an option that we can look at doing what we can barely do while the pressures of growth occur. So as development occurs, we have pressures on all aspects of the city, whether it's, you know, shared facilities. There may be other abilities to share with other districts, water district, fire district, and a multi-purpose facility. Refinancing some of our bonds up in the northern community. One of the exercises we haven't quite developed, I think, from the staff retreat was looking at financial options for all of these things. So there was a full exercise in the afternoon that we discussed, and some of the ideas you saw in front of you, but some of them are really not ripe at all. And I know that it's a tough situation that we're in. I think the basic message is that we can look at those critical items, those critical needs to address what we need. There's an urgency there because we have a lot to pay for if we want to maintain and operate the city as we go. But a lot of that is tied to the economy as well. And as the economy picks up, you'll see those revenues pick up, and you'll see other things come about. But certainly, I don't want to present the image of let's just not do anything, because we can't afford not to do anything. But in the longer scheme, we can look at those specific issues that are most critical, and I think that's the exercise. I think Roger and his staff, as well as city staff, can put some meat on the bone to what you're asking for. But the timing is a difficult thing because we're going right into budget after the retreat, and so we've got a lot of challenges, and looking at how we pay for them is, I think, the message tonight. But we will do our best to put together as much information as we can.
If I can just ask or make a follow-up comment, I think, and thank you. I guess one of the things that I envision is the cost of inaction. If we don't extend capacity on Tower Road, if we don't extend capacity on, you know, such and such a road, pick any number of these things. Trash is one we've talked about over and over again, right? As in when we see growth return to the community, that's a burden that we share or we carry fully, right? Today our trash bill exceeds our property tax revenue. So when growth comes back, that's going to continue to trend north. How do we take a look across these different factors and figure out which of these are going to follow a similar trajectory, right? Where we don't have revenue, the revenue or the costs are going to outpace or outstrip those revenues. If we don't extend, you know, lane miles in certain corridors, what does that do to the overall traffic picture in our community, and how does that constrain growth? And I think just trying to brainstorm, and it just has to be a brainstorm to help put some of those ideas down on paper to help council, you know, start from that point and pick up the discussion or the brainstorm from there, so that we're being as smart as possible on what those recommendations should be. Because I don't think anybody up here wants to see the inaction plan, but at the same time, we acknowledge that we can't just go out and do it all tomorrow. And nor is it smart to do it all tomorrow, right? I mean, there's some sense in how this work needs to get staged and pursued. So,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, and this is a great discussion, and I would add to the fact that this is a discussion specifically on the long-range financial plan, which is still ongoing. But I think, we all should try to not confuse the two with our budget versus our long-range financial plan. They're intrinsically linked, but I think the main part of it is that we have a budget process that we're working on, a retreat that's really on the short-term time frame, and then we have a long-range time frame that we should look at the longer financial components. But they are related, and I think that's where the two get blurred, because in our conversations at the retreat, and you'll see next week, is what do we put on a ballot to pay for some of these things? And how do we do that? So there is a component that is short-term, and I think that's enough.
And I'll make my last comment and yield. I think it's good to reinforce, because it is. They are separate but different, and we've got to continue to sort of waffle, if you will, between the two discussions to make sure that we don't lose momentum on the long term, but pay attention to those short-term objectives. So thank you.
Mr. Bullock?
Somehow I kind of forgot what I was going to say. Every time I was getting it regenerated, then I would lose it. But when we look at this one potential funding source as a council, look at that not as what we're going to fund. Look at it as what you hate on this list.
Yeah.
This should be your first priority, because when you look at the ice chest, I don't know if we should get a smaller elephant or bigger chest, but there's some things on this potential funding source that are absolutely are going to be no-go items that are going to bring more pain than anything that we could do. And then when we get to the good news, it isn't all that bad. When you talk about the $250 million over 10 years, and we can take 40 million of it out right now during times that aren't that great, it gets better. So, it's going to be a really great discussion on our retreat. But I just like to say, when I look at the funding source, I can cross out about 6 of them right now that I know that wouldn't fly any way in no how. So, there was something more I was going to say, especially about that little elephant. That would fit in the chest. Okay, but nobody wants to see a little elephant get cut up.
Okay. Thank you, sir. But this was wonderful. It's so nice, especially later in the meeting. You've done a great job on this, sir. Would you make sure that this is available? We who don't get hard copies, didn't get copies of this. Could you send that electronically? So
Certainly,
that we would
and
have
thank
it?
you for indulging us.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Thanks so much. Okay.
Roger's not used to applause.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's give it to him then. Okay, the next one's easy. I'll entertain a motion to change the June 13th meeting of City Council to a City Council staff work session to begin at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and end at approximately 9. Mr. Marino.
So moved.
Mr. McEldowney.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, change the June 13th City Council meeting to a council staff work session, begin at 3, end at approximately 9. Voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item is administrative council business. Again, this is not reports. It's if you need some action from council. Ms. Snyder.
Yes, I have a few things. Mr. McBroom, I received another call from Anita Mosier. She's the one over at Bell Creek who's having issues with the parking situation with the elementary school. She told me that no one had contacted her, but I know when I got the report back from you, you had indicated that she had been contacted, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but I do want to make sure that we address her and take care of her needs over there. Apparently that situation's getting a little bit worse, and so I think that hopefully we can come down to some kind of resolve for her, if we could check into that. So if you wouldn't mind, letting me know what I can do to help bring that to resolve, I'd be happy to. Thank you, sir. The second thing is I would like to ask the council, I know that next week we were supposed to have the discussion about those minutes, and without getting into any conversation right now about that or going into any details, since Councilman McEldowney and myself will be gone to ICSC next week, I think that the main problem really, in my opinion, was just communication or lack of communication, really. So I think that if it should probably would be to our advantage to have the whole council here, and the next meeting that we would all be here would be, because next week is Memorial Day, it would be the first week meeting in June. So I'm going to ask the council to let me know how they feel about moving that discussion so that all of us can be here for that discussion. And also, City Manager Flannery, if you could come back at some point with some of your thoughts about how we could better communicate and just have more communication amongst all of us. I think that's really at the root of our problem, is we just need to have better communication within our own council. So thoughts from council?
Anybody have a challenge with that, Mr. Bullock?
I don't have a challenge. I didn't know there was going to be discussion. I just thought that we asked for that minutes to be typed verbatim in order to.
Well, I have a feeling
okay
there probably will be some discussion. If I know
Yeah.
some of the members of this council, there may be some discussion, I'm guessing. I'm just saying I would like to be here as a part of that, just so I can hear and see and just be part of
Okay,
it.
I have no problem with
Okay.
putting those minutes off to the first meeting in June.
I appreciate that. Thank
Anyone
you.
else have a challenge? Mr. Flannery, could you take care of that, please?
Thanks so much. And then lastly, I would like to ask the council to consider extending the Economic Development Incentive Program for an extra 3 months until September the 1st, partly so that we can use them at ICSC, and secondly, so that we could use them as we're going into the construction season. And I was thinking that at that time, Economic Development and the committee that met, business, thank you, yes, the task force, they could come together and then analyze the situation at that point in September and then come back to council with a recommendation. How does council feel about that?
Mr. Bullock?
I was going to bring that same item up tonight and ask for a 6 months extension. I didn't want it to be just 3 months. I wanted it to go to the end of the year because it seems to be something that is working. So that was, I had already, but if, I don't know how council, 3 months, 6 months, I would like to see it go further than 3 months because it seems like we're just always voting on it.
Right. I think that it can't go on forever, Councilman Bullock, and we all know that. And I did speak with Ms. Morris, and maybe City Manager Flannery might have something to add in addition to Councilman McEldowney. But it seems to me that 3 months would be a good starting place for now.
Okay. Mr. McEldowney, Mr. Marino, and then I'll go to Mr. Flannery, okay? Mr. McEldowney.
I think just a couple comments. To speak to Mr. Bullock's thoughts on extending for the full 6 months, you know, Tracy and I and the ICSC visit team kind of brainstormed that very briefly. And one of the things that I think, if we go back to when we first imposed these or approved these, there were questions about how long we put these into place and sort of trying to differentiate a permanent policy from a true incentive. An incentive is short-lived in nature or finite time frame in nature. And so the thinking was that, you know, with the partnership with Economic Development, the City Manager's Office, this incentive package was formed. We don't necessarily know how successful it's been in real terms. We've certainly had some really good moments where we've approved the incentive allocations, but to make the decision to sort of extend this almost indefinitely or through the end of the year, we thought didn't necessarily make sense. Let's keep it as an incentive. Let's use it as a tool through ICSC, and let's get Ms. Morris and her team really working on analyzing the effectiveness of the program, what aspects of the program have been most effective, and come back to us in that sort of late September, early October timeframe, so that as a council, as this council, before the transition, we can work with Ms. Morris and her team to define what that future framework of economic development incentive needs to look like, rather than just having a perpetually extending this existing plan. Does that make sense? So if there are pieces of this that make great sense, then maybe those things do need to be in place perpetually. If there are others that really didn't have much traction or benefit, then maybe those need to fall out. But put it in place, get some good traction through ICSC and into the beginning of the year, and then let's close them off and come back with a long-term plan, if that makes sense.
Mr. Marino?
Not precluding a further extension, I do feel that we should follow staff's recommendation on the 3 months and then approach the subject again when that extension is the deadline for that extension comes.
Mr. Bullock?
I just feel that the building season isn't 3 months. The building season when I was working at the deck store, we had more building permits come through September and October, just as many as we did June and July. And with the weather we've been having lately, we've had a late start on our building season. I would just say 3 months just does not seem like it's an adequate time. But I do agree that we should get a report back from Economic Development on how this has worked and what they see as a future for it. And maybe we could put this conversation off until, I guess it expires, but we could make this retroactive, this conversation off to the first meeting in June and see if 3 months or 6 months is a better idea.
Well, we're going to be going to ICSC before that first meeting in June, so it would be nice.
But it's going to be, it's extended through ICSC anyway.
No.
It goes through June, doesn't it? Yeah.
Ms. Morris, would you like to come forward? Or no? I'm sorry.
Go to Mr. Flannery.
Oh, sorry.
Let him go to Brittany. So, Mr. Flannery?
Mr. Flannery, Brittany, we'll take anyone who wants to talk about it.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I will bring up Brittany, but I would say this. I think we're open to either 3 or 6. I think 3. The great thing about 3 is it causes you to have another conversation at 3 months to extend it if that's what you want to do. But I think the data, I think Ms. Morris can probably put together in pretty short order, probably in June, and have that presentation. So it really is up to you. I think there's value in both. It's hard to say which one without further discussion.
Good evening.
Brittany Morris, Director of Economic Development, and I think Jerry stated it well. We don't necessarily have a preference between 3 and 6 months, but I can tell you that the incentive program does expire June 1st. So as we head into ICSC and start having conversations with prospective retailers, it would behoove the council and the city to at least extend it for that 3-month period. So if there are follow-up conversations that we need to have, we can still have that program in place. Moving forward, I will say the incentive program would not end come September 1st. We fully plan, and it's also recommended in the Economic Development Strategic Plan, to have a long-term incentive strategy. That being said, our original intention of that initial economic development incentive program was really to stimulate the economy, and it has worked thus far. But when stimulating the economy turns into subsidies, that's when we want to look at what are we really doing to incentivize business into coming into Commerce City. So that's the information that we'll be bringing before you, and we can bring that to you later this summer so you're able to make that decision, whether that decision be made in September or whether it be made in December. Just let me know. Any questions?
Mr. McEldowney.
Just a last comment. I think it ties into Ms. Morris's comments on incentive versus subsidy. I think, to me, the idea of extending for a 3-month period functions more like an incentive. Even though the building season may extend well into the early fall, if there is a knowledge out there that we are drawing to a close this version of our incentive program, it functions as an incentive and says, hey, I may not have built this thing until October, but if I don't get my permits pulled and if I don't get this work started, then I lose out on the incentive. And so it becomes a motivator in that regard. And the idea with revenue is to realize it as early in the year as you can. So I guess my thoughts are, it makes sense to me based on Ms. Morris's feedback and on trying to, again, keep this functioning as an incentive to put a narrower window on it and then look at what that long-term framework might look like. So,
I do.
yeah.
Mayor, just one point to that I forgot to mention. If the program ends September 1 or December 1 for that matter, as long as the applications are in, we actually process those at a later date and time. So that's what we've been saying about June 1st is get your incentive application in, and then it actually comes before council later than that date. So to Council Member Bullock's point, if there are projects in the hopper for after September 1, they would still be considered. That application would just need to be in by September 1st.
Okay. Ms. Snyder?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm sure everyone on council can appreciate, I just want to make sure we have all the tools in the toolbox heading into ICSC to make sure that we can do what we need to do out there. So that's where I was coming from. Rather you choose 3 months or 6 months, I just think we need to have something in place so that when we go out there, we have every tool.
Okay. Mr. Gaylor, what do we need to do at this point to either extend it 3 or 6 months? Does somebody need to make a motion one way or the other?
Or consensus?
I don't think you can do that.
I think a motion directing staff to initiate the necessary paperwork to extend the program in accordance with your direction would be adequate, so it's just a motion at this point.
Okay, and then the 3 to 6 months doesn't really need to be decided?
Well,
or does?
I think that
Okay.
direction needs to be given to
Okay.
the staff so they know where they stand with that.
Okay, Ms. Snyder?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to extend the economic incentive program an extra 3 months until September 1st, at which time the Economic Development and Business Advisory Committee would meet and analyze to give recommendation back to the City Council for further direction.
Mr. Marino?
Second the motion.
Okay, a motion, a second. Discussion, Mr. McEldowney? Okay. I have a motion to extend it for 3 months. Request a voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Is
That's
that
all
good,
I
sir?
have. Thank you.
Okay. Administrator, what I need is council consensus. I've been contacted by the Roller Dolls. They have come in possession of a sloped track. They have an idea for a promotion that would say something like, come see the Derby in Derby. But because that would take some extra work from staff, I want to make sure the council is okay with staff getting in touch with their contact to see if this might be something we want to tie into. They had looked at the high school, but the high school is not an acceptable site because of some health challenges in the gym. Does anybody on the council have a problem with staff getting in touch with Roller Dolls to at least look at it and see if it's reasonable or something we could do? And it can be done at an outside location.
It doesn't even have to be done in outside. I think that if it's going to promote our city, it's something that helps our city along.
Okay.
So I'd like everybody to know that we have contact with the Roller Dolls.
Terrific. Mr. Flannery, could you get in touch with Ms. Haft, and she's the rep that came forward, and just see if it's something we can do, if we had a flat area that we could make this work? Could be fun. I don't know if anybody's been out to First Bank. I don't know if we can talk about outside places, but if you've been out there to watch them, they are just, it's hysterical almost. I mean, it's really cool. It's not like roller derby in the 50s, but it is pretty cool. Not that any of you were alive in the 50s. Okay, administrative business, Mr. Johnson.
Your mic.
Oops, I'm sorry. Did somebody else have their?
No, he didn't have his mic on.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager, and staff, especially those great citizens of this fair city, it is with heavy heart and a lot of excitement that I report to you that tonight, in pursuit of my retirement, I have moved to a retirement community that has some really great amenities. Therefore, I must resign from this City Council.
It's okay. Take a deep breath. You're fine.
Take your time.
I have served over 8 years, and we have gone through some good times and some tough times. I have enjoyed serving with the people in this community, and I've always strived to do what is best for the whole city. For me, it was a delight to serve the great people of this city. I have made some friends, and I remember that I'll remember the rest of my life, and I enjoyed working with this council and serving with them. I have learned more than I ever could have imagined, and have met people and seen things that I never could have done without being on this council. First of all, I'd like to thank my wife and my family. For giving up so much for me to be here. Then I'd like to say my heartfelt thanks to the people of this fine city for all the love and encouragement that you've shown me. Then I'd like to take a moment to thank the city manager and the staff for your caring and professional way that you take care of the city's needs. I'd like to say thanks to the council, and I thank you for fighting for what you believe. And even though we don't agree all the time, I respect and your candor and concern. As we all know, the citizens have the final vote on whether we're right or wrong. This is the heavy part, is when I need to say goodbye to my friends and my neighbors. Thank you.
I think I speak for all of us, and a couple have already put their names in to talk, but you've been a great influence on the city and this council, and you are going to be missed, and we will expect you back in here in November when the rest of us follow your lead, let's say. Mr. Marino, if you tell me that's why your parents are here, I will find you. Mr. Marino.
Councilman Johnson, I'm very sad at the news that you bring, but also excited that you'll soon be reaching retirement, and I think you deserve it. You've worked very hard. I've known your family for a very long time, and it's actually your family, your daughter, that encouraged me to run for city council. And I think this community owes you a great debt of gratitude for your service. I remember being in middle school and frequently going over to your house, and when Dana wasn't there, you putting me to work. And I always made sure Dana was there from then on. But there's I think that you're a great man, and I know we haven't agreed on a lot of issues since I got on council, but I've never had anything but great respect and admiration for you. Your family has shown me nothing but love and support and encouragement, and for that I thank you. And I'll miss being able to see you every Monday night, but I know that you'll be much more relaxed, and hopefully there's some good TV on Monday nights that you can watch too. But yes, thank you for everything.
Okay. Ms. Snyder? You're never going to do this.
Okay.
Tony, my relationship with you goes way beyond these council chambers, these walls. You're my Sunday school teacher from the time I was 4 or 5 years old on. You've been my supporter, my cheerleader, my friend. I love you and Dottie and your family with all my heart. And it breaks my heart to see you go. But I want you to go in peace and have a really good retirement and enjoy everything that you deserve. You've been a great man and a great example for me, and we truly love you. Thanks.
You did well. Mr. McEldowney.
Man, I absolutely echo the comments from Mr. Moreno and Ms. Snyder. I haven't known you that long, but it's been a good 4+ years now, almost feels like 5 years. You are, as Dominic put very well, you're a great man, and it's been my distinct pleasure to know you and to learn from you and to watch the thoughtful leadership that you've given our community. I have valued your perspective, and I have valued your friendship, and I will miss you. And Dottie, thank you for being a great sidekick to this guy.
Mr. Bullock.
Thank you, Tony. We started in 2003, served 4 years. Yeah, this comes with a little bit of peace because I know that it is a decision you didn't make lightly, and to make it, it gives you peace, it gives your family peace, but I want to thank your family because they're the ones that had to miss you on those Monday nights, and when things were going on, they got to do them and you got to sit here with us. But I also want to thank you for being the man that you were and being here with us. You know, it hasn't been the smoothest of roads, but if it had been, what would we have done? Probably nothing. So thank you for your support and everything that you've done throughout the years. And the city thanks you.
Ms. Carson?
Mr. Johnson, I have not sat here a great length of time with you like your fellow council members have, but it's been very enjoyable. You and I met before this, and many times those discussions were in opposition of what each other thought was the right thing to do. And I know there has, here on council, we have faced some of those same issues. And thank you for the fact that when we're done with those issues, the respect level is still there. The agreement to disagree and still have respect for one another has been very easy to do with you. And I thank you for what you have done for the city, and I thank your family. Also, now that I sit here, I understand how much work this is and how much time it does take. So thank you for everything that you have done. And I wish you well. It's a new adventure in your life, and I wish you great happiness, and we'll be fine. So I know this did not come easy with you, but go enjoy your life. Thank you.
Again, I can't say enough about you or for you. You and Dottie have been some strongholds during some hard times. You're one of the people that got me involved in this, and for that I will never forgive you. But you know, you've been a great person on this council, and you know, we're going to miss you. Did you want to have any of your family? Did you want to introduce your family, or did you want any of them to speak? Or I'll give you the option, even if you just want to introduce them, because most of us know who they are. But
yeah, we have. I think you heard her.
Yeah.
Earlier, that was Zoe Grace. Zoe has no grace. And out chasing her down the hall is her mom, Dana. And the guy in the red shirt is Chris. My daughter, Tanya. Her fiance, Eric. Wave, Eric. There you go. He can also fix anything technology. Kathy, my sister for a long time. My beautiful wife, Dottie, my bride. So, and then Bubba, Micaiah coming in the door there, who keeps Grandpa going. Hi, Zoe.
Do any of them want to speak?
Does anybody, if you want to say something, anybody?
Okay, not a problem. Thank you for all you've done for the city by supporting him. Without family, each one of us can say it. Without that family support, there's no way you can get this done. It's impossible. So you're the backing behind him, and we're going to miss you. Thank you very much. Yes, and you're going to stay through reports, right? Good. You don't get off that easy.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I was
Mr. Marino, I'm sorry.
wondering if I could request a brief recess so we could properly thank Mr. Johnson and his family for his service.
That would be terrific, Mr. Flannery. Okay, and let's take if we could have I don't know if you want to bring them up or we want to go back there, or what do you want to do?
Huh? Could you all come up front here?
Okay, you want to get pictures too with your family?
You like it? Do you like it?
No. All I saw was when they knew what was going to happen here, and I see the two of you.
No, there's good.
Nice to see you. All right. Good. And yourself? Good. I was afraid he was going to say, oh, yeah.
David brings the toddler out. You gotta make sure that you don't feel not close.
She excited when she saw it.
Do you want to give him a hug? You can go.
Luckily, we're ahead of time. Yeah, I saw her at well, what I didn't want to have. No, that's good. Is for him to come back. I said, well, how come? He can ask you the question. No, I knew. Yeah, great. Oh, sorry.
Do you want all the kids and? Hang on. You're fine. All right, everybody ready? Yep. 1, 2. Oh, help if I turned it on, right, Zoe? All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. Oh, you want to be held by Grandpa? Okay. Okay. Hey, Zoe, can you look at me? Zoe, right here. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's great.
Dominic, perfect idea. That was really good. You've been a great guy, you know. You really have.
I sure enjoyed my friendship with you.
So, when we're done. Okay. Okay, getting back to the meeting, which is always tough. We're going to go into reports. Do we have any legislative tonight, Mr. Flannery? Do you want him to come up first before I call you? Okay. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This is a very short report on the legislative. It is the final report for this legislative session, and I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be presenting it to you. But just very quickly to get to the numbers, the date that by statute the legislature was supposed to adjourn was Wednesday, May 11th, and that's how it happened. In total, there were 597 bills introduced when you don't count resolutions and other types of bills. 324 were in the House and 273 were in the Senate. As far as what we tracked, we were actively tracking and following 29 bills. We supported a total of 5 bills. 4 of those passed and 1 failed, so that's approximately 80% record on that. We opposed 13 bills, 11 of those failed and 2 of those passed, so that's an 85%. And then we monitor 11 bills, and those kind of go either way. One last item that we were focusing on intently was the redistricting process. Unfortunately, the legislature, they were not able to agree on a final map, and so the matter is now headed to the courts where it's been resolved, I think at least in the last 2 previous times. That's my report.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you have a report on your dais, but I think it would be good to just mention a few of them. You're invited tomorrow to a meet and greet in the foyer of the Civic Center from 12 to 1 to meet potential candidates for the Community Development Director position. Wanted to mention, as promised in the State of the City, the westbound 96th Avenue is opened to traffic, and so thank you to Public Works and the railroad for coordinating that, and the contractors. So glad that's open. Friday, we have our Cultural Diversity Summit, sponsored by the One Community Board, with involvement from council members as well as city staff, and that will be held from 7:30 to noon on Friday, May 20th at the Civic Center. Lieutenant Governor Joe Garcia is the keynote. Council members are invited to participate. Those in attendance will be recognized at the opening. The Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge Visitor Center opening is set. Interior Secretary Ken Salazar and other elected officials are invited to attend the grand opening of the Visitor Center on May 26th. The event is from 11 a.m. to 12:30, followed by light lunch. RSVP no later than the 23rd to Sherry James at at the Visitors Center. Her address, we can put it on the website, but for those of you online and on TV, Sherry space James at fws.gov. Formal invites have been also distributed. So that's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. And since you did most of what I was going to do anyway, if I could just add one more thing for council. Where is it? Wednesday? Okay.
Thursday.
Is it Thursday?
Douglas Colony?
The Douglas Colony one?
Thursday, the 19th.
And then what's happened is we have, let me see if I can find it before I get too far. North Metro Rodeo, which is RTD Fast Tracks, is commemorating the signing of the Record of Decision for the North Metro line, marking the end of the environmental planning and beginning of design and construction, and that's on the 19th. We need a representative from council to speak at that, and neither myself nor Mayor Pro Tem Snyder can do it due to other things because we're doing Douglas Colony and some other things. If there's anyone on council that can do this and speak for council, it is at 10 o'clock, is that correct? It's at 10 o'clock at the National Western Stock Show. If somebody who's here can, I'm sorry? I'm just waiting to see if anybody's going to click.
I'm willing to do it.
You'll do it?
Yes.
Would you please get with Ms. Halstead, or do I go to Mr. Flannery? Ms. Halstead, and arrange what needs to be done? I appreciate you standing in for me, or for us. When you see my reports from this week, you'll understand what went on. Mr. Gaylor.
Couple of things. First of all, with the City Council's information, the City Clerk is working on the verbatim minutes that reflect the Council's discussion regarding naming of the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Visitors Center. And I just want to confirm it's my understanding that only that portion of the minutes dealing with the naming discussion needs to be transcribed verbatim. The rest of the minutes, you don't need verbatim. Is that a true statement?
Any challenge with that from council? I don't see any. That's right, sir. That's what I had heard that night, even though I wasn't involved in it.
Okay. The second item is a number of you attended the neighborhood meeting involving the Carapace Homes project, and that the approval of those elevations was initially sent forward by the Community Development Department to the Planning Commission and ultimately to the City Council because of the controversy involving the homeowners as well as the developers, and it's a pretty contentious issue. Well, Brian McBroom and myself have been having extensive meetings, and I mean extensive meetings with the homeowners and the developers to try and reach a meeting of the minds where that approval can be granted administratively without the necessity of going through the Planning Commission and the City Council. And it looks as though at this point that there will be an agreement which will satisfy the homeowners and the developers will consent to it. At this point, we're not able to tell you definitely that that is going to happen, but at least verbally, we seem to have an understanding. We don't have any written agreements at this point. But I'm just alerting you that if you hear or understand that the application has been withdrawn from the Planning Commission and will be approved administratively, you'll understand why, because then you won't see it, because there will have been an agreement reached between the homeowners and the developers that satisfy all concerned and satisfies the city staff with regard to those elevations. So this is more of an information item, but If that transpires, we expect it'll transpire tomorrow because the Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for tomorrow night. So this is just an information item, so you'll know what's going on with that project. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Karen Stevens will be acting as, for the city attorney's office, as acting city attorney, since I'll be leaving tomorrow morning early, very early, and won't return for a 2-week period. But my office will be in touch with me for emergency situations. Otherwise, Karen will be in charge of the office.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney, did you change your mind?
I can infer the answer from the statement from Mr. Wheeler.
Thanks. Mr. Marino.
Well, Mr. Giller, I just want to thank you for your work on that front, and hopefully, and Mr. McBroom, both of you, it's a testament to your work to find a solution in a seemingly impossible situation. So, really appreciate it. On Friday night, I attended the 14er Fest. Always a great event to support the kids in Adams 14. Last year, I was one of the speakers. They were interested in bringing back people that actually got the scholarship to come and speak. So it was great to see. And actually, this year, the younger sister of a girl I went to high school with was receiving the scholarship. So they do excellent work. Earlier in that day, I attended the Battle of the Bulge. I joined with Mayor Natal and many members of Commerce City staff in a friendly competition against Brighton to see who can lose the most weight collectively. By June, what's the day, 23rd?
Yeah, 20-something.
Yeah, we got about a month. I was getting sideways glances earlier in the council room because I was eating the lasagna and the bread, and to set the record clear, Mayor Natal, I fasted all day to have that one meal. So I am still on track, and with any luck, Commerce City is going to beat Brighton. So pretty excited for that.
Okay. Ms. Carson? Ms. Snyder?
Yes, just a few things. I attended the 14er Fest on Friday night, and it was a nice event. And I don't know how it turned out numbers-wise, but I hope that it turned out well. It seemed like it did. Our mayor was the auctioneer, and I think he did a pretty good job. And some of those trips are really nice and go for an extremely reasonable amount. So, nice job on the 14er Fest. And then on Saturday morning, I attended a roundtable discussion, which had several legislators at it, and Brandon Schaefer was there, and it was hosted by AFSCME, the Teachers Union, the Fire Department, and the FOP, and it was a really great discussion. I enjoyed it. There was a lot there to learn. I took notes like crazy. I felt like I was in college again. So it was really, really a good discussion, and I enjoyed the opportunity to be there and met some really great people. Also attended an event that was hosted by Rick Teeter, who made his formal announcement that he'll be running for Ward 4 in my seat. So that's an exciting thing. And then lastly, this evening, Councilman McEldowney and I had the ICSC preparation meeting with City Manager Flannery and Brittany Morris and Michelle. And getting ready for ICSC, we're going to go out there and do our very best. So thank you so much, and I will not see you next week because Jason and I will be gone, but look forward to coming back and giving you all good things in the report. Thanks.
Mr. Bullock?
Before I make a report of what I did, I want to make a report of what's coming up this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's the first annual Friends of the Front Range Wildlife Refuges Film Fest at the new Visitor Center out there at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. And that site is just outstanding. And on Friday night it's from 5 to 8:30, and on Saturday and Sunday it's from 9 to 8:30. And they have these first run wildlife films, and on this weekend a lot of the people that made the films will be there to comment on them and sign autographs, and they'll have different items for sale that go with the films. So I would like as many people from the community to go out to this and see what this visitor center looks like and attend the Film Fest. Because it's the first one, and if it's a success, it's not going to be the last one. It's just going to grow and grow and grow. That's that. Now reports. Last Tuesday, I attended a Water Commission meeting with South Adams County Water and Sanitation. On Friday night, I was also at the 14er Fest with the rest of council that was there. And Saturday, they had a sneak preview at the Rocky Mountain Wildlife Refuge of the Visitor Center that was very well attended. It was a wine and cheese event, and I would say that I got there late because I had to work, but there had to be, they said, 100 people that attended. And it was a great event, and we have a great venue in our community now that highlights the Rocky Mountain Wildlife Refuge. Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney?
Quickly give an update on some items that are coming up this week, since I won't be here next Monday. Friday, as we heard on the calendar, is the Diversity Summit, the first ever. Will be held here at the Civic Center, being sponsored by Community Enterprise. Keynote speaker Joe Garcia, Lieutenant Governor, and really just an exciting event. Again, first run of this event, bringing community leaders from all walks together to talk about diversity and its impacts and the opportunities that it brings to our community. Really a neat, structured discussion, and I'm hopeful that out of that event comes an ongoing dialogue about how the leaders across our community can work together to further the community as a whole. Also on Friday, I will have the 27J Capital Facility Fee Foundation Board meeting. As I've mentioned in past updates, the board, the participation agreements for the Capital Facility Fee Foundation are set to expire soon, and the discussions continue about how to revision that body in an effort to try and continue its good work. In real quick terms, for folks that are not familiar, the Capital Facility Fee Foundation was formed as a partnership between the communities that make up the 27J School District and the development community some 10 years ago as a creative tool to add capital to build a fund to help build buildings in a district that they anticipated was going to grow very quickly. Some of the recent successes that this body has helped to contribute to were the building of Otho Stewart Middle School in Frontera. Their participation was instrumental in securing the land. They've also helped to secure water for other projects, and I don't have the total monies raised through the foundation off the top of my head, but the sad thing is that this foundation is set to essentially expire, and it's an incredibly challenging time for this body to come to this point because of the sad state that our developers are in. The developers that are still in business today, that have survived the downturn, are really not in a position to think about voluntarily extending fees on building. And so there is a great chance that this body may cease to exist. So the objective of this coming Friday's discussion and the near-term discussions is to try and figure out how to preserve the body and potentially see it reinvigorated in the near future at a more constructive time. I think that will suffice. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to go next before Mr. Johnson because I have something planned. Monday, I was at the governor's ED meeting here at the Rec Center. Tuesday was the Water Commission. Wednesday, went to the Open Space Awards out at the county building where we picked up the check for $312. That was really nice. Thank you to everybody from Parks and Rec. Also that day, Habitat did a dedication on their duplex up on 69th Place. I want to welcome those families to the city. They have, I think they're doing 7 homes this year and maybe 11 next year. So, I want to welcome both Habitat and the new families. On Thursday, the Executive Board for Metro Mayor's Caucus met talking about our next coming meeting. But more important than that, the International Committee of Metro Mayors met and We are in final negotiations with bringing a contingent of Chinese elected officials and businesses here to the Denver area. Being that it's now gone over to the International Committee of Metro Mayors, it'll be handled through them, which will make it a more metro event than it might have been in the past. Friday was the Adams County Mayors meeting, which is always interesting to hear what's going on in the county from the different mayors. Buffalo Run with Councilman Moreno was exciting. It was interesting because I could lose half of the body weight of the mayor of Brighton, which really puts it all in perspective. But, it was interesting. 14er Fest. Saturday, we opened up the community gardens at Anythink, which was phenomenal. We probably had 35 or 40 volunteers down there. They're going to have, it's a community garden. It was wonderful because the rain held out till after we were done. But if you get a chance to go by 72nd and Monaco, and you can see it. And I really want to thank Anythink and the library system for, allowing us to go down on their land to open this. This is, if I believe right, it's the second one we've done in the city. We've also done one over by where Community Enterprise is. So we have 2 of them now down there. I was also at the Visitor Center open house on Saturday. So, and I think that's it. Tomorrow I'm at a Habitat breakfast. So that'll be interesting. And then there's 3 things I just want to bring up. Douglas Colony on the 19th, Thursday. The Memorial Day Parade, biggest one in the state. Make sure, you get a chance to get out there. And people from Parks and Rec have assured us that it's going to be a nice day. And then also June 2nd for council. It's Brighton and Commerce City's joint council meeting out at Buffalo Run at 6 o'clock. It's a Thursday night, and it would be nice if we could see everybody up there. Now, since we only have had one minister on our council, I have asked Mr. Johnson to just give us a little going away prayer, let's say, sure. If you can do that.
Sure.
Okay.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this time that we can come together here. And Father, I pray for this council and for the city and the many, many great people who live here. And Father, I just ask that you give this council incredible wisdom. And Father, help them to look into the future, into that crystal ball that you've given them, and shape this the future of this city. And Father, we just ask that you give them that peace that surpasses all understanding as they mull through all the issues that face them, as they face this elephant that's in the room. And Father, we just ask that you bless this city in a very real way. And Father, we just pray that your presence will be in this community, and that this community continue to grow together as they seek and follow you. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. If there be no further business to come before this council, meeting's adjourned. Everybody drive safe going home. Chief, we need like a little sticker we could put on our car windows, like little plastic stickers or something, because they don't do antennas anymore. Well, no, for next year, because every year you do them, but, I guess.
For the action.